Let's go over some basics of free motion quilting with the Pfaff Quilt Ambition 630. Now you probably bought this machine because it's got the extra space, all this great light, and the foot for free motion quilting comes with this machine. So I'm going to show you how to get set up, a couple tips along the way for needles and thread, plus I love to machine quilt. I wasn't always a machine quilter, but I did give myself a full year of taking many online courses, which I highly recommend over at Bluprint. Check out the links below this YouTube video if you want to see what I did to learn about all the great things that you can do with free motion quilting. And it is all about practice. So eventually you're just going to have to pick a quilt and start quilting it. You can only practice for so long, and then you actually need to get started and try it out. I think when you actually stitch on something more than just a little piece of fabric sandwiched together with some batting, you put your heart into it. So definitely find some time, some quilt tops that need some quilting, and give yourself the time to improve over each one. You get better as you go. So the first thing I am going to do is I need to actually get the screwdriver to loosen and take off the full ankle of the presser foot. So we're coming over to the left side, and go ahead and loosen this and take the screw completely out. I tend to like to leave a foot like this one attached to the ankle. So instead of just pulling the ankle off and then taking the foot off the ankle and then having this ankle rolling around and I can't find it, I like to leave a foot on it, and then it's a lot easier to find when I'm done free motion quilting. Now your free motion quilting foot is going to have this arm that sits over here on the right side. This arm needs to be above the needle screw. So as you kind of bring it in and position it around the post where you're going to put the screw back in, make sure that that arm is sitting behind and above the needle screw. So this is spring loaded. If it's not sitting as easily as you thought you would, take the hand wheel and drop the needle down just a little bit. Make sure it's coming down into the center of the foot, and I can guarantee you that everything will line up just a little bit easier, because when we get started, this foot actually hops up and down and on the fabric, which makes the stitch just stitch out so much nicer, trust me. But it might give you a little resistance when you're trying to get it lined up. So lower that needle down, trust me, that will help. And then when we tighten this, we need to tighten it well. We don't want to over tighten it, but I also need it tight enough that you don't get it wiggling loose later. So I'm going to bring that needle up just a little bit so I don't catch it when I'm putting my fabric in. And the last thing I am going to do is slide off the accessory box, and we're lowering the feed dog. So behind the machine on the free arm back here, there's a lever, and I'm pushing it to the inside of the machine, so to the right. And it's going to be hard usually. Those feed dogs are going to go down, and just a reminder, when you go to bring this back the opposite direction when you're done free motion quilting, is they don't come up until you take a stitch. And one thing that might not be a bad idea is to leave yourself a sticky note that reminds you those feed dogs are down, because here's what's going to happen. You're going to free motion quilt, maybe you get your project done, you're kind of done sewing for a little bit. 3 weeks go by, you come back to your sewing machine, you're all set to sew, and you're wondering why your fabric does not feed through the machine. Is because you forgot, and it's a common thing. So I can tell you that if you were around our store, that's a very common question when people call and their machine isn't feeding, and it's like, are your feed dogs up? Did you forget to bring them up after a project? And they're like, oh yeah, that's the case. So once those feed dogs go down, doesn't matter what the stitch length is. The one thing we are probably going to see as soon as I show you how we're going to get started is adjusting the tension. Now today I actually have a fun little variegated thread in the needle, and we have a solid color in the bobbin. So as soon as we peek on both sides, you're going to see if we are going to get a balanced stitch or if we need to start adjusting it, and then if we do, which way to adjust the tension. Now I am going to use the foot control to guide me today, but once you get going, don't forget using the start stop button is actually not a bad idea for free motion quilting. You can touch it, but of course, if it's going to go really fast, so just bring that speed control down to maybe about halfway. And you can do this while using your foot control too. Kind of sets like a cruise control level, but the combination of starting and stopping, having your machine just stitch while you move the fabric, that's actually kind of fun. Maybe not the first time out, but definitely an option to see if that is easier for you. So next, I do know that the last time I sewed, I used the thread cutter. So my bobbin thread is very, very short. Traditionally, a lot of people will talk about lowering the presser foot and taking a stitch while holding onto the top thread and bringing the bobbin thread to the top. Now I can't do that right now because that bobbin thread's so short it won't make it to the top. So if it's already short to begin with, really, you can go ahead and start to stitch. So this is what we're looking for. As you're going to sew, it is all about getting the hands and your stitching speed to kind of start to link in so that it looks like the stitches are nice and even. Not too short if you go too fast and not too long if you don't sew fast enough. So that happy medium is the part that needs practice. So here's what we're talking about. I'm going to go ahead and do some stitching, and as I get going, I can start to move my fabric. Now I am a fan of stopping with the needle down as well. So once you have it stopping down, it will hold your fabric in place. So you could do something like this, clip that thread out of the way, and then begin to stitch again. So again, this is the part, like I said, that takes a little practice. As you get going, this becomes easier. Each time you do a little bit more. Now right now I have got the foot control all the way down as far as it'll go. Do you feel how controlled that speed is? So my hands can kind of start to know that that's the speed it's going to sew, and then I can know how fast to move it to get those nice even looking stitches. Now before we go any further, let's do this. I'm going to cut the thread and we're going to peek at the back side. So traditionally, okay, so this is why you bring your bobbin thread up when you do it, so you don't have this little glob of thread that you have to kind of either deal with or cut down or something. I'll show you how to do that next. But this is what I want to look at. This is probably what you're going to see the first time out without having to adjust any tension. You're going to kind of get sometimes these little what I call spider webby looks. It's not nice and even on the back. It's not bad, but you can tell that it's not what you probably want to see on the back of your quilt when you flip it over. So what's happening here? So we are getting the bobbin thread, the tightness down there is pulled too much of the top thread to the back. So that means that I need the top thread to actually be tighter, so as it pulls up against that bobbin thread, then it's going to snug itself closer to the fabric. So I'm going to take my tension and increase it. So right now it's 4.4. Come down to the settings menu and start to increase it. Now I always say go up a whole number at a time. So 4.4 means going up to 5.4. So definitely a couple touches here. If you just touch it once, nothing's really going to change much. It's not enough change to do anything. But because I need a little, I'm going to actually take it all the way up to 6. Okay, so how about this? I am going to take a few stitches just for fun. Yes, if you don't lower your presser foot, it won't let you stitch. I love that feature. Now notice you can actually stitch right from your tension screen. And here's what I want to do. I want to just stop. I'm going to bring my needle up and I'm going to lift up my presser foot. Having both these threads now will allow me to show you what it looks like to bring your bobbin thread up. Okay, so here's my little sample for this time. And how's it look? All right, a little better. I probably could go a little bit more. I like it's definitely much better. Here might be just because I made a little longer stitch, but what if we gave it a little bit more time? Let's go up to like 6.5. Push in 7, I bet we can tighten that up, and then you wouldn't be able to tell which side of this fabric I quilted from. So I'm going to go to 7. Now, here's where the threads are, and so if you don't want that little glob when you start, hold on to your needle thread, lower the presser foot, take a stitch. So you can even just come right up here, touch the needle down, needle up button, and then just move to the side and then lift the thread up. You can lift the presser foot up too. So this little loop is actually your bobbin thread. If you pull that to the top side and then reposition your needle over where you took that stitch, you're going to be able to do a little stitching. All right, so okay, so this is probably the last time I'm going to stitch, so I'm going to just use the thread cutter, but let me show you how nice that is just to come here and you're cutting both those threads that you have, and when you look on the back side, see how perfect that is? So speaking of back side, that is a good looking tension. So I can't tell if I sewed from this side or that side. So that's what you're going for. So it doesn't matter what the number says, as long as you're balanced, as long as what you see on your fabric is actually what you're going for. Because remember I said I had 2 different colors of thread in this machine? I actually have 2 different brands of thread in the machine. So the one at the top is a different weight than the one in the bobbin. So you're going to have to balance it out no matter what. And if you don't remember which way to go, like how did I know to go higher, if you went looser, it's going to get worse. So then you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I should probably go tighter, and then it's going to start looking better, and then you'll know how far to take it. So I hope you'll give yourself time to practice. This is a great machine for free motion quilting. The foot is included, but it is going to take some time. Check out all the wonderful classes that Bluprint has to offer there. Those machine quilting experts are amazing, and that is how I learned how to free motion quilt.